Hey guys, welcome to episode 12. Oh my god, I have only again 10 fingers and two, right? So I'm not able to say it. But anyway, guys, so
Yeah,
let's
maybe 10
just
fingers and two heads.
yeah. So today we're going to talk about enterprise RAG and very interestingly, today we have AI Ray as well back to talk about
Hey
RAG.
guys.
Yeah, say
Hey
hi to AI
guys.
Ray. High five from here. And today, our episode is going to talk about enterprise RAG and why you should leave it to the pros. Okay, so today in this episode, we will take you through the RAG, the components. Last episode, we took you through the components of the RAG. AI Ray had explained what are those components. But today, our podcast is going to discuss as to perhaps what are the pitfalls in each of these components and what you should look out and watch out for. So we'll be talking about that very soon. And let's get in straight, AI Ray. Let's just give everybody a quick run through, isn't it? So we had these 10 components of a RAG where you had the data
Mhm.
collection, feature, extraction, vector database, and then came the training pipelines and the inference pipeline. So we had those components, right? ARA, let's go through the first part, right?
I got a question to ask you, Vivek.
Tell me.
What do you know about driving?
Driving. I think I can drive a car.
Yeah, I drove a car once and then I just thought that maybe it's so easy I should be able to drive a bus. And you know what happened?
Yes, I can perhaps guess. I hope you didn't land in a ditch.
No, I did drive a bus, but I almost ran into a ditch because I had no clue what I was doing.
Okay, so that's a good example, guys. So if you knew how to drive a car, doesn't mean that you can drive a bus.
Oh,
Yep,
yeah.
let's move on.
Yeah.
Should we go on to the systems one by one, right? So let's
Yes,
go
Vivek.
into the data collection pipeline, right?
Yeah. In the last episode, we spoke about what are these data platforms and what are ETLs. But Vivek, I think we should be more specific about the kind of information that you'll be handling. Now, what what are the types of information? What are the sources you're looking at if you want to look at an enterprise RAG?
Yeah. Here are the different data. The data comes in multiple different options, isn't it? So you've got, in this case, it's data from digital, but typically our clients would have internal sales data, or they would have, let's say, data from Nielsen or Kantar or market research reports, some other consulting reports, et cetera, et cetera. So that's basically what would happen. Yeah. So that's the kind of data which most clients would
That's
have.
interesting, Vivek. So essentially, what the viewers are seeing right now is examples of all these websites which have tons of information.
Correct.
And the LLM can basically, based on the prompt, go look up for the information on the website and come back.
Correct.
But in your case, the examples that you quoted, these are going to be offline files which are readily available with you.
Yes. So this is the difference between, let's say in this use case, this diagram, they are using this one. Whereas in our example, we are talking about creating an in-house RAG system, isn't it? That's the difference, correct? Yeah.
So the steps remain the same. You still have an extract, transform, load model, which is going to ensure that the information that you provide, it gets extracted and then it is transformed into the kind of digital formats which the system wants to understand. And then you load it for further processing in the next stage where you extract the features.
I think one of the key things, I think maybe we should also spill some secrets, right? For instance, if it's an Excel database or for that matter, so we have seen, I think maybe we should tell some of the pitfalls right now, right? One of the pitfalls of RAG is that there are hallucinations which happen, correct?
Oh boy.
And especially when there is factual information asked. For instance, let's say a factual information would have been, let's say you had your internal sales data, and the factual information would be what are the top regions by sales for a particular SKU. Now, that data cannot change, right? But the problem with an LLM is that if it doesn't know the correct answer, it might hallucinate and give you the wrong answer. Am I right, AI Ray?
Yeah. That's how I used to be in school. Yeah, exactly. So that's the problem with any LLM today. The minute you start asking for information which it doesn't have, because remember, all the LLMs are trained on information Meta is trained on its own data sources. Wikipedia is one of the most common sources everyone uses. And there are government policies and directories and tons of stuff on the internet which is open for everyone to access. That is where the hallucination can get induced, because the system knows what's the answer of a question like where's the capital of France. But then if you ask for some information which is so mundane that may not be there in its own information base,
Yep.
it's going to keep insisting that it is France, and the answer is always going to be Paris.
Correct. So let's move. I think let's go to the next. This is the feature pipeline, right? And so, ARA, where do people get stumped over here? What are the typical pitfalls of this ingestion pipeline? What does it actually mean as well?
Vivek, I think we should understand ingestion pipeline. We should probably go back to your library example.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the ingestion pipeline is essentially the phase where the system is going to understand the differences between the different types of information and then index it and ingest it in a manner which is appropriate for that information. For example, if the complete set of Harry Potter books comes in, the librarian knows that it has to go into the fantasy fiction genre. And although it sounds like education, he would never put it in the history books.
Yes.
But imagine that the librarian is someone who doesn't understand, for example, Bahasa. And a set of books in Bahasa have a picture of a castle or maybe Hogwarts. It's very easy for the librarian to mistake it for a set of history books. Now, the standard method of ingesting information is too simple. And that is why the ingestion pipeline is designed to understand the kind of information you're giving it. Because what is represented, you can represent a table in the form of a graph, but the LLM won't necessarily understand it that way. That is where the ingestion pipelines come in.
Perfect.
And they understand that the information that is shown as a graph it can also be narrated using words. And that is why this is one of the most important key parts of the entire process.
Yeah. So which means that you've got all this brand health track, you've got internal sales, and you need to make the correct kind of context and store the correct kind of context into this ingestion pipeline. So I think, you see, that's where I believe, and this is where I think we've had this discussion as well, right? People who understand the data play a very important part over here, because you see, we know the kind of data which is there inside a brand health tracker, or for that matter, a Nielsen report, or for that matter, an internal sales file, right? And we need to almost teach the system, hey, this kind of data is here, this kind of data is here, and here are the kind of contexts that are required so that you might want to merge this data. I think that's what this means, isn't it?
Absolutely, Rick, absolutely. You cannot build a RAG if you don't have people who don't understand the information.
Correct.
A lot of tech guys may be able to do it for you.
Yes.
But without understanding the information, you would always get the wrong kind of LLM.
So it's not about having an AI and ML engineer and a thing. If you don't have business sense on the kind of data that you're going to pass into this ingestion pipeline, this is where a lot of these tech bros fail, because you see, they don't have the business sense on the data. They don't understand how the data might be related, etc. And that is one of the first points of failure where an enterprise RAG in implementation, all these big AI and ML engineers from the fancy organizations, they fail. And so that's important, viewers. We need to understand context, and we need to know what this data actually means, and teach it to the computers and the RAG models. So let's move forward. And so now
tech bros, but that's the truth.
Sorry?
Apologizing to all the tech bros out there.
Yeah,
this is the truth.
Yeah.
I just hope I don't get banned from Reddit.
Truth is bitter. Yeah. And well, we have also tech pros, right? But we also have business bros as well. So the combination of the tech bro with the business bro is what gets you the RAG, right? Finally, right? It's about having that business sense, not just some AI programming, right? Because that's where both these things need to talk to each other. Okay, let's move on. So we've got so now what happens next, right? Where are the kind of problems that you can face? People generally get confused. What is a vector database and what is a VLM, etc., right? So that's something maybe we should perhaps explain.
Yeah, so let's look at it this way, Vivek. I think in the previous podcast of ours, I'd spoken about how you differentiate between it, how you understand a table as some kind of an attendance sheet.
Yeah.
So a vector database is very different because you can imagine it like a two-dimensional or a multi-dimensional database where
Yes.
each information can get linked to multiple types of similarities or similar pieces of information.
That is the key.
Now, yeah, that's the key because let's be honest about it. If you have given information, your sales data to the RAG, you're not always going to just ask what was my sales in the past year or the past month. You want the system to collaborate your information and then give you a response by saying, oh, look, these are the regions where your sales was low, and perhaps you need to pay closer attention to what's going on there.
Yeah. And perhaps link it to the brand health tracker where it might show that, let's say, in a drop in market size has come or something like that, isn't it? So there's the linkage as well, right? The context of linkage, that's important, which is what perhaps a researcher does. They look at both this information and they can actually make an inference and connect the two, right? Isn't it? And this connection, is that what happens in the vector database parts? That connections? What actually happens?
Leaving aside all the boring stuff about how it exactly works, I think your explanation does it for everyone. The information that you feed in, or that is now ingested into the vector database. Now, you saw in I think it was step 3, where you had the ingestion pipeline with 3 kinds of information: articles, posts, and code. Now they've been vectorized. And in the next step, when you go ahead, you notice that now it is available for retrieval by retrieval clients.
Yes.
And in the diagram, the information available in the vector database is going in 2 different directions. This is where it is going into the training pipeline because you want to improve your model. You want your LLM to be able to understand the context of the information that you're giving and understand your requirements. Because you see, context changes from person to person, context changes from position to position, department to department, and so on.
Exactly.
And this training pipeline, it is essentially the LLM fine-tuning that is happening, starting from, let us say, the QGent, or rather the vector database retrieval clients, providing the information to conversion for addition of metadata and text. And then that data is fed into the prompt layer, which is essentially what you use to chat with the LLM. And then the LLM is, perhaps you have an experiment tracker, which is going to allow you to analyze the performance of the LLM and quantify it based on some preset parameters. Otherwise, you can essentially have a person who understands the information to verify the response and say, look, this is not good enough. And based on this,
So, AI Ray, what I just wanted to interject was, this is done in the beginning, the training pipeline. So when we get the information the first time, we need to ingest the data properly, create the vector database, and then train the LLMs on your data, right? So that's what is happening inside this training pipeline. Because you see, if we go to the next step, it's already the Q&A part, right, where you're asking the questions. But the very important part is over here is about the training part, because this is teaching the RAG, and here's where we are going to test, right? And I feel that, don't you think, let's say, if you had 100 hours for, let's say, just to put 100% on the whole development of a RAG, I feel that almost 40% will be going in this training pipeline. Am I right in saying that, or is it more?
Without a doubt, Vivek. This is the most important step, because you may find the technique to ingest the information correctly, but if you don't train the LLM, you'll still be dealing with nightmarish hallucinations.
And also, I think maybe we should leak out some secrets as well. For instance, for the Excel kind of stuff, there's no point creating, you shouldn't be, so if for factual information, the trick is not to ask questions via an LLM, but to ask it using a data analytics kind of a model, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So interesting that you bring it up, Vivek, because a lot of the times when I talk to people, everyone wants AI.
Yeah.
That's good. You should look at AI. But then a lot of the times, the use cases and the problems that they want to solve are not AI problems.
Absolutely.
They're simple analytics problems.
Correct.
I'm not trying to say that an AI model cannot do analytics. Of course, it can do analytics.
Yes.
There's no doubt about it. But then you need to be very clear. If it is only analytics that you need, the tools are already available.
Correct. Right.
But if you want a system that can do analysis, it can do retrieval of information, it can answer your queries. And in addition to factual answers, it can give you suggested predictive answers.
Yes.
That is where you
AI.
need an AI system.
Yeah.
And that is where the RAG will play a major role.
Absolutely. So connecting information you still need. I think you've just nailed it, right? Factual information, a lot of it. The technique for, even though this is a RAG implementation, you would see that factual information is answered through data analytics techniques primarily, right? Whereas predictive information is where the AI LLMs come in, AI race. So I think we've got the training pipeline now. So we've come towards the end, isn't it? We've got these other steps. So this is, I think if you see here, we talked about the LLM candidates and selecting. So in that training phase, is where we'll do a lot of, like we always joke, right? On Hugging Face, there are right now 1.5 million models, isn't it? So we need to know which is the right. Again, here is where, let's say, enterprise RAG versus, let's say, an in-house RAG. That's where I think maybe some failures happen. What do you think?
Look, another thing that a lot of people who come to me and talk to me about AI systems is that they quote, there are 4.5 million models on Hugging Face. We can use any one. And I tell them, of course, you can use any one. But which one are you going to choose?
Correct.
How are you going to choose the one that you need? That is such a difficult question, Vivek.
Correct.
And sometimes it has the simplest of answers. And people will end up wasting so much time experimenting and figuring it out. I know a few guys, even in my own early days, I spent months working on a certain model. And then I had trained it and tuned it to respond to a certain set of queries.
Correct.
But then I realized that there was a better model always available, and I never used it.
And I think that's
a key.
Crucial. So the model, I think we should have a registry of models. And I think that's where, this is a constant. That's why you see a RAG system is not something that you just sell and forget, right? Every month, new data comes in, isn't it? And the models are also improved, right? I think we also need enterprises to know that, right? When you get new data, there's also, like people like us, we'll also come in and see whether or not this is the right LLM candidate to take this data, right? That's where when we charge you guys the maintenance fees, don't get surprised, guys. There's a lot of work there, isn't it? Yeah, right. So people think that, oh, we built this one time. That's it. This should run forever. Why are you asking us more money? Isn't it?
Yeah. So when you buy a fancy car, you got to take it to a workshop once in a while.
Absolutely. Here you need to, in fact, every month you will have to, because the data changes every month, right? Most of the data kind of thing, which we showed in this example, when we talked first, like Nielsen or BHT, or depending on the kind of frequency of data that comes in. Anyway, sales data is monthly, right? That is important that we refresh the models as well. And then comes what are the final pitfalls? We're ending almost at the end, fag end of our podcast. So what are the final, let's say, like pitfalls that can be there in the inference pipeline?
The inference pipeline is where essentially you have figured out which model you're using and you're already using it. And the inference pipeline is where you're evaluating the inferences being made by the system, the kind of responses you're receiving. Remember, this is the selected LLM. If you look at the top, you've examined various LLM candidates, and then from the model list, you've chosen one LLM.
Yeah.
And the chosen one is the one which is giving you all the answers.
Right.
And then you want to be sure that these are the kind of answers which you need, and you're constantly running inferences, and then you're constantly evaluating them. Then finally, you're tuning them to make sure that they stay on the right side of logic.
Right.
So the inference pipeline is, again, it's not something that just anybody can do. It requires expertise in understanding all the APIs that you use for raising the questions, delivering the answers, processing the information. And because if you look on the diagram, you got the vector database, which is here, and the inference pipeline is using the information from this vector database.
Yeah.
So the retrieval is being carried out directly from this database.
Yes.
And then you infer it as a continuous process.
Correct. Right.
So essentially, Vivek, what I want to tell everyone is that you may be the best of drivers for your car, but you're not good enough yet to ride.
Well, I think this is a spaceship, not even a bus, right? So we need to make the clear difference. If you can drive a car, you cannot drive a spaceship. So that's where I think we should end this. Thank you, AI Ray. It was brilliant talking, and I hope our viewers
Pleasure, Vivek.
enjoyed this episode. And please do leave your comments, and please don't forget to like and share. That's it, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.